Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for being with us today for this series called Adventures of the Awakened Heart. The purpose of this is to really help people, especially during this tumultuous time, to really get connected in to their heart and to inspire and empower people around the world with the stories that we bring to this podcast. So my name is Julie Tara, and I'll be your host here. You can find out more about me at julietara.com. And I'm really thrilled to be doing this. It just felt like a very inspired thing. And today I'm super excited because I get to bring in my beautiful friend, Brigitte Mars. Brigitte, thank you so much for being with me. Brigitte and I have known each other for 30 years or so. We were just figuring that out. It's pretty incredible. And I'm just going to let you know a little bit about Brigitte. Brigitte Mars is a herbalist and nutritional consultant of natural health with over 50 years of experience. She has taught herbal medicine at many prestigious centers all around the world, including Naropa University in Boulder, Colorado, and the School of Health Mastery in Iceland. Brigitte is the author of many books, which you can find through her website, and I'll put the link below. And her latest project, super exciting, is a phone app called iPlant. Brigitte has also been a well-loved guest on Healing Matrix with Sue Morter, Inspirations with Lisa Garr, and Psychedelica, all on Gaia. And this is about interviewing our Gaia members. And we're very blessed because Brigitte is not only a Gaia member, but a guest on several shows and most beloved. Please check out her website at www.brigittemars.com. And it's really rather fortuitous, Brigitte, that today is February the 1st, and it is this day of Imbolc in the Gaelic tradition, which is the day of Bridget. And it's so beautiful that we're doing that today. And she's a goddess. And one of the stories about her, and it's so you, I just want to say this, is she walked through the forest, and everywhere she walked, snowdrops appeared where her feet landed on the sacred earth. And I think that is just so exactly who you are to me. So.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, Bridget and Freya are supposed to be this, one goddess, many names. And it comes from the root word of bride of God, and also bringer, like bringing together, and bridling. Anyways, and bridge. So they all come from the same root word. Britain is also named after her.
Wow, that's amazing. I never knew that. And
Uh-huh.
I do feel we're bridging right now this sort of old crumbling earth to a new earth and a new time and a golden age. I feel like you are one of those very important rainbow bridges in my life and in many, many lives around the world.
Oh, bless you. Thank you, Julie.
You really are. Well, since we're here with Gaia initially, my first couple of questions are about Gaia and you. And so as part of the Gaia community, how long would you say you've been on the path of spiritual awakening?
I think I remember being a child and looking up at the stars, probably, maybe 9 years old, and thinking, who am I? Is there life after death? Is there life on other worlds? Will I ever know the answers? And I think that was probably, just a heart's longing. But it probably even goes before that. I had a Catholic mother and a Jewish father, and I really respect that they had a long, relatively happy marriage together, even though she spoke French, he spoke English. They were different religions, and yet they found a way to make it work. And I think that was very inspirational to me. But one thing they had in common was there's angels in both religions. So I always felt this sense of, calling on the angels and being comforted by angelic presence. And I had a brother that died as a baby. I never met him. He died when he was in the hospital. So there was this, sadness in our house. But I think the death makes us also think about, is there life after death? Will we ever meet again? And so even though death is a harsh teacher on this world, I think it also makes us think about what is there beyond.
Wow, absolutely. I never knew that you had an older brother. I never knew that after all these years. I do know your house is filled with goddesses and angels and fairies. We can see them in the background. And I always love that because we have such a fairy connection. Um, that's very powerful. And didn't you grow up in like a teepee or something? Did I make that up?
No, you didn't make that up. I went to an all-girls boarding school, Miss Hall's School for Young Ladies. My parents were hoping to shelter me from the burgeoning hippie movement that was going on in the world. And even in boarding school, I was sort of an alternative health practitioner for my students because I was the only vegetarian in the school. I did yoga, I meditated, and I was just like turning every class project I had into a way to learn more about herbs. So I would write my papers on herbal medicine during the French Revolution, or plantas medicinales de Mexico, or plant chemistry. And but I ended up being expelled from Miss Hall's for some of the herbs that were in my drawer. But before that, the young ladies would come to my room for their cramps and their headaches, and they say, "Hey, try some of this." Like, I read chamomile tea work, see what happens. So I would just, dispense these herbs to them. And even though I was a kid, I felt this strong connection that these plants have been used by millions of people for thousands of years. And, that's certainly good enough for my grandmother, who certainly didn't have the privilege of the education that I had. But soon after Miss Hall's, I found myself living in the Virgin Islands, helped open up the first natural foods restaurant there called the Magic Door. And then, even though I was only 17, I ended up becoming the manager of a natural food store called the Health Nut. But the crime got really intense in the islands, and there was that Crosby, Stills and Nash song, "We got to get back to the land."
Yeah.
So one of the things in the hippie movement, which I sounded very appealing to me, freedom, peace, love, end the war in Vietnam, which was a big topic then, natural health. We bought land in the Ozarks in Missouri. And I did live for 2.5 years in the teepee, and, had my daughter Sunflower was a toddler, and then my daughter Rainbow was born in the teepee. And that was a great learning experience. And
Wow.
also a big opportunity to learn more about plants and what did the natives do? What did the, hill people do in that area? And even though people might have said, well, they're just hill people, but I'll tell you, there's a lot of wisdom in them thar hills, as you might say.
Oh, yes. And I think this is one of the reasons that, Guy chose you to be on the Psychedelica series, is because you have such a wealth of knowledge. And I have to say, it feels to me like you've done this for many, many lifetimes, and you're just sort of bringing all your knowledge back again, for the well-being of not only humanity, but our planet itself. Um, Absolutely. So let's talk about this awakened heart. What does this awakened heart mean to you?
Well, that's a beautiful term. And, to me, I'd say that, my prayer every day is to be of service to humanity, to serve the Creator through helping people to choose the plethora of natural plant medicine that's around, and helping to uh, empower people so that they can take more responsibility for their health. Because if you feel good in your body, it's a lot easier to be of service and help one another and do creative things than you're locked and you're imprisoned in this temple that we've been given. So and to me, it's reconnecting the plant realm with humanity, because I think that, many of us grew up in an age where those kinds of folk remedies were considered old wives' tales. However, I was very inspired by my French Canadian grandmother to see that a lot of those old wives' tales were medicine for the people, that they were affordable, they were available in almost every kitchen. And it was really a shame that people didn't know what to do, and that when we were sick, someone else was going to be in charge of our health. So to me, it's sort of a spiritual responsibility to take care of this bodily temple, and ideally to use remedies that are for the healing of the planet, that, grow, that provide pollination for the bees, that are, blessed by the sun and the wind and the rain. So to me, all of that is a very awakened heart moment to realize that they're not just weeds, they're like awesome, awesome.
I remember this vividly when I had my healing center up in Estes Park, and you would come and take us on herb walks. And I can remember to this day you walking around and going, oh, look at this. This is marrow. This is good for headaches. And it was like seeing the land, which it's so beautiful up there, it's so wild, but you wouldn't know that you could eat all those different things that you were pointing out. And even recently, when I came to your home, it was a few months ago now, but where you walked around the nettles. Now nettles, we always had stinging nettles in England, and I told you I remember falling in them off my bike and falling in a whole thing of stinging nettles and being stung all over. So I wasn't really a fan of stinging nettles, but you showed me and you taught me, and then we went inside and you made nettle juice, and it was delicious. And I know when I was in Bulgaria, we had nettle soup, and it was delicious. So there's a way to work with something like nettles that's so powerful. So always when I'm with you, I'm brought back to the land, and I love our land. I love the environment. I love our planet Earth so much. And so I feel like with you, that awakened heart is very much awakening to the heart of Gaia herself, and the heart of, I would say, our cosmos, because you introduced me to the Urantia work, which was amazing and is amazing. And, I read that and get really stirred, deeply stirred. And so that helped me awaken. So do you have any stories you'd love to share about times in your life where maybe there was a really big transformation and an awakening occurring in your heart?
Sure, I will share. And I want to say thank you for mentioning the Urantia book. I've been reading that since I was 19 years old. And to me, that was also an awakening, like, wow, maybe there are some answers to those soulful questions about why am I here and what happens after this, and is there life on other worlds? Yeah, trillions of inhabited worlds. That sounds great. And I know Gaia is all about ancient astronauts and who were they, or ancient civilizations and all of that. But, one story I'd like to share is that something that happened when I lived in the teepee. So I had come to Boulder to go to massage school, and I came to Boulder as a single mother with two little girls, Sunflower and Rainbow. And I went to massage school, and, it was kind of a difficult challenge. And I met a wonderful man who was my partner for 38 years. But we went back to the farm, in the Ozarks, the commune, where my first husband lived, the father of Sunflower. And, we're living in the teepee, and my new partner said, boy, it'd be really easy to hook electricity up to the teepee, and then we could have a little fan because it's really hot there, and we could have a little shop vac to vacuum these rugs from Afghanistan, and maybe a little boom box so we could play Jimi Hendrix after the kids were asleep or something like that. And I remember one night I went out to close the teepee flaps, because when you live in a teepee, you see the stars at night, and there's something really marvelous about living in a round dwelling. All the animals, they make nests and round dwellings, and none of these sharp edges that humans surround themselves in. Yeah. So I said, I'm going to go close the teepee flaps. And one thing you're supposed to know in the Ozarks is don't go out after dusk without your boots on. But I thought, I'm just going outside to close the teepee flaps. And I felt this sharp pain. And I looked down, and I had just been bitten on the foot by a copperhead snake. And I came inside, and I'm like, oh, what do I do? I started like flipping through all my books, looking up snake bite, snake bite. And one book had like all these Chinese herbs, the Barefoot Doctor's Manual, and none of those Chinese herbs were in the state of Missouri. And my partner, bless his heart, he turned on the little shop vac, the little vacuum cleaner, and sucked the venom out. And then, which I thought, that's really clever, because that wasn't in any of the books.
Yeah.
But then I did pull out a book on Native American herbal medicine, and it said to use echinacea. And so my partner yelled to the farmhouse, and my former husband's girlfriend came down and collected some echinacea, because it was growing right near where the snake was. So that's another powerful thing in nature, that very often what you need is right there. And she made a poultice, and I chewed on some root while she made tea. But what changed for me was the next day we went and visited this old man who lived, down past our farm, and he had a donkey that he rode into town once a month, and a real hill person. And we asked him, like, well, what do the people around here do for snake bite? And he didn't call it echinacea. He said, well, we use that there, snake root, because that's the Missouri folk name for it, snake root. And I really appreciated his wisdom. And he also said something about, you should go put rocks under your arm and lay down in a creek, so that when you faint, you won't drown. The rocks will keep you like propped up in the creek, but the cold water would slow down the assimilation of the venom. And, I realized that I had gone to this, wonderful school, and yet there was so much I needed to know, especially if I was going to live out in the wilderness. So that really changed my method of learning. Right after that experience, I started highlighting when I read in books. I started cataloging information, so I'd have a card on, what's good for arthritis, what foods are good, what herbs are good, what homeopathics, what acupuncture points, what essential oils. So it really made me very studious, because I realized it was a huge responsibility to live in the wilderness and have small children and not know what to do. And I said, what if it had been one of the children that had been bitten by a copperhead or something, when there's no doctor around. And so that was a huge wake-up call for me and changed my life. So that was a big one.
It's like, resilience to the nth degree. It's like learning survival skills, truly, and self-care on a level that most of us wouldn't even think of. Although we do have snakes here, rattlesnakes and so forth, but we don't see them very often. Mostly bull snakes and so forth.
And of course, the sensible thing would have been to go to the hospital, but that was like hours away. And so time was of the essence. So thinking quick. So, I wanted to share that.
Yeah, that's a huge story. I mean, it's amazing you didn't really get terribly scared. Did you get terribly scared?
I realized that fear was the enemy, that fear makes the venom course through your body even faster. So that staying calm was really important, and quick action was really important. And we didn't have a telephone, so there wasn't like, let's call, there was no one to call, really. So
did your foot swell up at all, or what happened?
No, I think we acted so quick. And of course, snake bites far away from your heart and your brain are going to be less deadly than like if it happened near your heart or brain. And
yes.
So that was a big learning experience. And I actually have 3 little heart things I might share, and maybe you have another question for me in the meantime.
No, I'd love to hear your stories, because heart opening and heart awakening happens on so many levels in so many ways. So no, go for it.
So, when I was growing up, I especially when I was a teenager, I was like very rebellious, and, thumbing my nose at society, and we're really questioning things like racism and the war and politics and all of that. And I think because of that, my father worked very, very hard, and I didn't see him that much. It was my mom who was like, driving me to school and taking me shopping and making the meals. So I didn't really understand the value of the father. And my my father passed away when he was younger than I am, of cancer, and I was able to go and see him and show up. But a couple years after that, I had an ayahuasca journey, and they sometimes call ayahuasca vine of the soul or vine of the dead. And I don't know if this is true or my illusion, but during that journey, I really felt that I was able to have some communication with my father, and able to share with him, now that I'm a grown up and I realize how difficult it is to raise children. Even though I didn't maybe see you all the time, you were there working to support your family. And of course, what's a kid think? Like, dad's always gone. But it's like, I realized that you were doing something. And I felt that my dad, it makes me a little sad, but I felt that he said, thank you for writing books. I love books. I'm really proud of you. And I felt like, even though he was gone, that we were able to have this great healing opportunity. And so I'm also an end of life doula now, because I think that so often we fear death, and we think, oh, that's the great mystery. But to me, that was very healing, and it really changed my attitude. And I felt like, dad, it's like we had a therapy session in one night, from God knows how many millions of miles might have separated us. So that was another big aha.
That's a huge, huge aha. Many of us have issues with parents, yeah, and often with fathers. And I just want to share this because I've never shared this ever. But when my father passed, and I had a lot of forgiving to do, because he left when I was 11 and we moved to America, and I was in England. And I did forgive him, and I did let him know that I'd forgiven him before he passed. But I want to say this from what you just said about ceremony. Not long after he passed, I had a dream that I was in a Native American ceremony with rattles and drums, and we were honoring his passing. And then we did something really strange. Well, I took a part of his brain and ate it in the dream. And my father was very brilliant. He was a strong academic at UCLA, started the Department of Psychoneuroimmunology, and wrote a lot of books on Teilhard de Chardin, The Naked Ape of Homo sapiens. And he was very, very, very bright. And I always felt like I never got enough, connection with him around his brilliance. And that was the dream. And I woke up and went, I know that really happened. On some other plane, that really happened, and I felt this incredible connection there. And he did come and visit me, because we had an agreement that whoever died first would come back and talk to the other one. And he came many times, would sit on my bed and talk with me, and showed up in all kinds of ways. So it also took away my, not that I ever had a fear of death, I always had a fear of people I love dying. That has always been much more of a fear for me than my own death.
Well, thank you for sharing that beautiful story. And I think that, both of our stories share that, like, just because someone's gone doesn't mean that the levels of healing and forgiveness and appreciation can't continue to unfold. And I do believe that the Creator has a plan, and that, it really is about, open your heart more and forgive more. And it can happen in different levels, for sure.
Yes, yes. This weekend at Gaia, Nassim Herman came and was talking about physics. And he was talking about how the universe is always like a cheerleader cheering us on to evolution, to higher levels of understanding, and love is a huge piece of it. It was so inspiring, Brigitte. I can't tell you, like, it was so confirming that he's shown in physics what we learn in spiritual texts, and that forgiveness is a huge piece, and keeping the heart open no matter what. I was listening to Ram Dass last night, and he says when we close the heart, we feel literal pain. It's painful to close the heart, but we do when we're really hurt. But the quest is, can we open it again? So your story is really powerful about your dad.
And I can share one more if you like.
Oh yeah, we have the time
So,
for it.
I was married to the man that saved me from the snake bite for 38 years. And then about 10 years ago, he met a woman, a young, beautiful woman, and he was sure that she was the love of his life. And he decided that he was leaving and that I worked too much, and he was done. And we had promised and pledged to each other that we would be together forever, even hopefully through lifetimes after this and all that. So, and the idea like, oh, I'm going to be like 59 years old and getting divorced, like, oh, this is terrible. And, great, great heartache. And, probably one of the most helpful things was my massage therapist said, make a list of 100 reasons why this is okay. And I remember thinking, well, what's okay about this? This is just terrible. And I started out with like really small things like, okay, well, I don't have to vacuum every day, and I don't have to knock myself out making gourmet meals. And, at the same time, my best friend, who is a very celebrated artist, her husband died right around the same time. And so we both supported each other and made our list, what's on your list? Well, he's not suffering anymore, and I can travel again, and I can get back to doing my art. So, we are all going to die. And in a sense, divorce can be like a death. But I kept saying, well, at least your husband died, in love with you. So I did, take homeopathic Ignatia, which is supposed to be good for heartache, and I use Bleeding Heart, and I also realized that I was, spending a lot of time telling the story to everyone. Every time I'd see an old friend, well, how's your husband? And I like tell them the story, and it'd be all teary. And then I realized, I'm spending like a couple hours a day telling this story over and over again, and it's really making me dwell on it. So I'm going to get it out of me and put it on paper and write it down. And if somebody wants the story, I'll send it to them. But I think that when we keep talking about the disaster, the pain, that over and over and over again, it really kind of keeps us in that loop. And I'd say another big opening for me was having to look at, sometimes the most difficult things in life can be our greatest teachers. And I have found love again. I'm, happier now than ever. So that's really wonderful. I didn't think like, oh, who's gonna, at my age, or, maybe I work too much or whatever. But I also kind of had to come to the realization of taking some responsibility that, you know, uh, I wasn't really careful about choosing the fathers of my children. I chose this lifestyle. I believed in that whole, free love thing that proved to be very expensive. And But I have to be grateful that I did have someone with me while I raised my children. They grew up with, not too much drama. There was someone who showed up for them. And so again, I keep coming to this level of like, okay, you really need to forgive and not be, um, holding on to hurt, really only just hurts you. So, and count all the blessings that you have. It's so easy to focus on the few things that are so painful and difficult in life. And yet we have so much. And even though, death and divorce are really hard things. I mean, when you think about what people go through on this planet, losing businesses and losing their homes and fires and war, that it seems to be the nature of humanity. And if we can realize that it gives us an opportunity to feel compassion for what it is, that very few of us get through this life without having something that really causes us our hearts to ache, and that we need to focus on all the blessings. And even if it's a health issue, we might say my arthritis or my migraines or something, but to look at, but look at all the things that are working for you. And hopefully the adversity is a challenge to get us to grow stronger and be more compassionate.
Absolutely. It's a very, very powerful story. And I of course remember it being your friend. And what I remember noticing was that there was a real time piece to it. There was a time for grieving. It's like that song, there's, what is that song? There's a time for everything. Um,
Turn, turn, turn.
Pete Seeger, turn, right? And you went through so much, and I feel like you were very brave because you went to the depths of your sorrow in a very honest and very authentic way.
Mm.
And you were there as long as you needed to be there until you could, you know, time and healing and exploration in the 100 ways that, this is a good thing. And kind of brought you, the universe lovingly brought you, kind of cradled you through, at least that's how it felt to me, cradled you through that devastating loss into a life of great celebration. I mean, you have a wonderful life with a wonderful love and beautiful friends and everything. And I always felt that like this is going to, I felt like this is ultimately going to be really great for my beautiful friend Brigitte, but I don't know how. And I get that it's awful right now.
And I thank you, and I thank all the true friends that show up for you, that are there to support you. And one of my friends said, the heart doesn't really break. The heart is a muscle, and there are things that can help comfort us during times of grief. And I love how, for example, soaking in the bathtub with essential oils can be a place to like cry and cry and cry and just like let it all out. Because when we suppress grief, it really can stay in our bodies and make us sick. So I would, like sob and sob in the bathtub, and then stay in the tub and let the water out and visualize all my sorrow going down the drain and being comforted by the earth mother. And then, you think of, the history of humanity is, there have been wars and pestilence, and some people are losing 5 children today because of starvation or pestilence or something. And, like these things challenge us. And, the Urantia book says that, it's been hard here for a lot of people, for a long time. You even think about how did it go for Jesus? Like it can be really hard suffering. And yet really all we need to do is decide that we want to have eternal life and that we want to survive and go on. And some of us have an easier time when we're here. And some of it is just a life of suffering. And so I really became cognizant of that. And I've also realized that when I do I think we're very uncomfortable talking to our friends about, death or divorce. I think sometimes we don't really know what to say. And so I've learned that this is really an opportunity to extend friendship and give a beloved friend an opportunity to talk and share. But I often find people saying, like, I often say, make a list of 100 reasons why this is a good thing. And it can be really hard. I think I started with 5, and then the list grew to like 125. And then I read it to my friends. And that was a very liberating moment too.
Yes. And then one can sort of shift the story, because our brains love to have these stories, and we assign a lot of meaning to the stories. And it feels like you really transform the entire story into something in your favor ultimately. And hopefully into the favor of the universe, because as the universe is always like conspiring to help us learn. I mean, the lessons, it feels like you really change, like it changed you a lot. I'm sure each of these stories has changed you a lot, and how you show up in the world and to others. Yeah.
So now I'm very, I feel a lot more comfortable like helping people through that grieving process. And of course I, apply some of the things from, Asian medicine, nourishing the lungs, and, what foods and what herbs But I do think that like water is a great healer. And, we're so blessed in Colorado to have numerous hot springs, but, many places in the country have that. And I feel like when we're going through a really hard time, to go and soak in the water and know that water is a great reminder to go with the flow and flow like the river, and all things pass and all things change, and to trust in the universe. Yeah.
Yes, yes, beautifully said. I'd love to ask you, since I mean you've really shown how it shifted how you show up in the world. What would you say your heart vision is for the future of our world? And I know that is a huge question.
Um, I guess, Julie, the first thing that comes to my mind, since we are in this like crisis time on Earth, and I really do feel, and this might sound a little cliche, but when I think about a lot of the things that the hippie movement was trying to do 50, 60 years ago, organic farming, natural childbirth, herbal medicine, recycling, alternative energy, therapeutic, sacred use of psychedelics, community, I don't know if I said recycling, creativity, creating art, beauty. What I'm hearing from a lot of young people is like, we got to get some land. We got to create sustainability. We need to learn to grow our own food. And I kind of laugh and say, I've been saying that for like over 50 years. I'm glad you're thinking about doing it. And I'd be glad to tell you some of the, pitfalls that happened as well. So maybe you can avoid some of those. And
that's the wisdom, right? Of having had all of your life experiences, you really can share this with the youth and help them avoid things as well as go for things.
Yes. And, I think the hippie movement was also part of that, sexual revolution. And I think that we've had to rethink that because, this was before STDs and, free love. I have a chapter in this memoir I'm writing where the chapter starts out, the price of free love was proving to be very expensive. And so it didn't always work out so great for the ones that ended up, raising the children on their own and trying to make a living. So,
Yeah.
I would say, and, drug use, that it was not done with intention. And, there's a lot of things that I would do say to young people, but I do see that they're wanting to recreate this sustainable get back to the land thing, which was a good idea, and to support one another and things like bartering and alternative spirituality, that it may not be the religion that our parents taught us about, but it did, that maybe there's other things we can explore around the world that resonate with us. And maybe we take a little bit from this and that, and they really all still take us to this place of devotion and worshipfulness.
Yes, yes. And I really resonate with that because I feel like my whole life has been this kind of circuitous route but it's all been devotional. It's like in devotion to, God, goddess, the universe, source, this land, our Gaia, our planet, each other. So, and we're coming to the end of our time, and it goes so fast, I can't believe it. But Brigitte, with everything that you said, and I'm like so touched. It's very rare to meet someone such as yourself in this world who's been really living, makes me want to cry, this incredible truth of being intimate with the all. And you really teach that. You really teach your love, is huge. And so what would you suggest, for our listeners today, is there one sort of nugget of wisdom that you could bring to help them on their path today, tomorrow?
Boy, I often think in like the levels of the chakras. So I'm going to give like 7 little things that we might do. And,
Yes.
right now, what I'm hoping is that we emerge from this time, because we're recording this, still very much during the time of the whatever we want to call it. We don't want to get censored, but the health crises that's affecting our planet. So I'm going to start with red, our lower chakra. Like we need to find ways of moving our bodies around that are less polluting. And so, here we are on Zoom. We're finding out that we can learn, we can take a class, that we can, even visit with our friends without having to use so much fuel. So drive less. And then orange is about, creating conscious community. Who are your friends? Get to know your neighbors, sweeten the relationships that you're in, whether it is you need to do therapy or you need just to speak kinder to one another. But really, who are you going to spend time with and how can you make that better? And then yellow is going to be about what are we going to put in our body? Like this is a time, there's not just one thing that is a threat to our health. It's that people are, poisoning themselves constantly by choosing the wrong things. People eat the things they're allergic to. People suffer from addiction. So, get right and look at what you're putting in your body. And a simple thing would be eat all the colors of the rainbow, try to eat a salad every day. Okay, so that would be yellow. And then also creating home and hearth. How can you make your living space more beautiful and clean and all that? And then green is about learning to grow more food, eating more local, but we need to start doing edible lawns. We're wasting our nation's resources growing grass. So learn about the weeds that are growing around you because they really are the creator's gift to us. Dandelion is not an enemy. And see what you can do about challenging those homeowner association bylaws where you can only grow grass because that's very wasteful. That's not going to help humanity. And then how can we, be more green? Like don't buy those polluting things anymore. Like learn to clean your house with baking soda and white vinegar. And then blue is about using our voice for speaking the truth, to speak affirmatively, to use our voice in a way that is empowering, like I can do it, I can overcome adversity, rather than I'm such a loser, and then this is where do we want to put our consciousness? Are we going to just like watch movies and read things that are of violence and movies that make heroes out of murderers and bad people? And that's one thing I love about Gaia TV. It really does offer an opportunity for expanding consciousness. And then the crown chakra, violet or gold or whatever color you want to assign to it, is about remembering to connect to source, because we're all going to leave the planet sometime and we should be ready because we don't always know when that day is going to be. So those are my 7 levels for creating a healthier world as individuals.
I love that. You just created an entire rainbow bridge for us, It's beautiful and such wise directives. It's fantastic. I'm so appreciative of you in my life, Brigitte, and for being here with me today for this podcast. You're just a lovely human being on every level, and we're blessed that you're here on the planet at this time.
The same back at you, Julie. Thank you.
Thank you, sweetheart. Much love. Many blessings to all of you out there. Bye.
Blessings.